Welcome to another day of Live at 5. I was counting up the episodes, and I think we are somewhere near on 180. Which is probably low considering I think it's almost the year anniversary. We started the show in March, and it's coming up on March again. So we're going to be the first anniversary show here. And look how far we've come. We've got I got a speaker quality. We've got this great backdrop. Look at all the red dots where Live at 5 is being seen all over the world. You see that? And that's the reality of the situation. We all need a little Live at 5, and it's not always 5, and in the southern hemisphere, and other time zones, this is live at something else. But if you are joining us on live at 5 at Facebook, and you'd like to join us on Zoom, you're certainly welcome to, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. And it's at Zoom address 694-348-057. It took me most of the year to memorize that number, so I'm very proud of myself. And if you're not already with us on here on Zoom, it's where a lot more fun happens. But I wanted to just welcome everyone and share a little bit of happy thoughts. You need some happy thoughts. I got two kids in the house with COVID positive, and my wife and I are COVID negative. So I called my friend across the street today for something else, and he said he's got the exact same thing. He's got two kids, moved it back in the house, COVID positive, and he and his wife are COVID negative. I said, great, you'll come over for Shabbos lunch. We'll have two tables. We'll have the kids table and the adult table. The kids table is COVID positive, and we'll be the COVID negative, and we all get along splendidly. Of course, we should do this probably outside on the porch without taking our masks off. But the truth is, everybody should just be healthy, and if we end up with some antibodies after this, noch besser, as they said in Yiddish. That's what they always said about antibodies in the Alter Heim. They just said noch besser. We just should have antibodies. You should be gesund. So we pray for everyone else's health, and that's certainly the top of our list. Today, I want to start by talking about an amazing moment. Today is the yahrzeit. We like to share the notable yahrzeits of special people in the Jewish from the Jewish people on the dates of the anniversary of their passing. So today is the yahrzeit of a very great formative leader in the modern Jewish communities of Israel, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, which means may his righteousness be remembered for a blessing. And Rabbi Sonnenfeld was in Israel. He actually went to Israel, I believe, in 1873, and he died in 1932. So this is already well before the modern state of Israel was there. But as there was several influx of early immigration from Europe to Israel in the first half of the 20th century, he was already there. Interestingly, he came from Slovakia. You probably never heard of a lot of Slovakian Jews, but he was a rabbi from Slovakia. His father was a rabbi from Slovakia. His father passed when he was very young, according to some reports, as little as 4. I read also 5. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld came to Jerusalem and was there for almost 50 years, well in advance of the recognition of the modern state of Israel in the world. And he was a very formative figure, helping to establish some of the what would become mainstream practices of Jewish life in the state of Israel after a big hiatus, and there are many beautiful stories that abound about him. He wore a very interesting flat little hat. I don't know if you could sort of imagine, it had a brim, very flat top hat, and you still see people wearing hats of that style. It's a traditional hat, and he was a student in Europe of the very very well recognized rabbinic line from the city of Pressburg. There's a great rabbi there, the Sofer family, last name Sofer or Schreiber, as it's also. You heard anyone named Schreiber? Schreiber is Yiddish for a scribe. A Sofer is Hebrew for a scribe. And there were some great rabbis there, the Chassam Sofer, the Ksav Sofer, as they are affectionately known, based on some of their writings. and he was a student there. And then when he came to Jerusalem, there was a Rabbi Diskin, Rabbi Yeshua Leib Diskin there. And between Rabbi Sonnenfeld and Rabbi Yeshua Leib Diskin, they really are responsible for helping to define some of the customs that that would be practiced, as we said, Jewish customs in the land of Israel. It's interesting to think about that. Let's just talk about that for 1 second. When I lived in Israel, I was fortunate to live there for about 8 years. I went there in my 20s, and I was a single student for a couple of years in yeshiva. Eventually, got married. I was there for a number of years afterwards, studying further. So one of my teachers, my great mentors of blessed memory, Rabbi Nachman Bolman, he used to describe the modern reality of Jerusalem as a kibbutz golius community, and that is Hebrew for basically we're like an ingathering of the exiles, because Jerusalem then and now is really populated by lots and lots of people who've come from all over the world, from the diaspora, from all kinds of different places, fascinating places. Right near us, there were communities of Jews who spoke all kinds of interesting languages and dressed differently and ate different foods. And it's really, it was and it is, an amazing time where Jewish communities have developed, all over the world separately from one another, and developed their own customs and community customs. And then now coming back to Israel, which is of course the what's meant to happen. And it's beautiful and it's exciting, but it also has the challenge. Everybody brings their customs back together, and they expect we're going to do it our way, right? I mean, our way is the way. Everybody thinks that their customs are the right ones. Everybody else. How's the old joke go? Anybody to the right of me is a fanatic, and everybody to the left of me is a heretic. So I'm the only one that's doing it right. And that's how everybody, to some degree, quite naturally, everybody feels. We're very attached as Jews. We're very attached to our customs, and we've had them. Some of us have, some of them are thousands of years old. We could be very attached to them, but there's differences. There's a kind of a funny thing that you see that you'll find people will make today, modern posters, artwork of of the good old days, like of Aaron and Moses and King David, and the European Ashkenazi Jewry will make posters of Moses in a fur hat and a big shtreimel, which he it was very, very unlikely that Moses is wearing a fur hat in those days in the desert, since they weren't really invented yet until European history much later. But that's just the way it goes. We all naturally imagine that our customs are of course the most ancient, the most classic, the most appropriate, and we sort of map them onto backwards. One of the real reasons why one of the pleasures, I would say, one of the pleasures of Talmud study is getting an insight into and a window into really what life was like 1,500 years ago. You're reading about these are the stories, and lots of what's there are stories and narratives and anecdotes, recipes. There's life advice there. There's all kinds of fascinating things in the Talmud, besides all of the deep wisdom and the practical Jewish law and life. But there's lots of interesting things, and you really get an insight into what their lives were like. It's fascinating, 1,500 years ago. And if you read the words of Tanakh, the books of the prophets, you can go back another 1,000 years. We have a lot of beautiful continuous written history, which is really fascinating. So today in Jerusalem, though, you have lots and lots of different customs. Some of them are, I wouldn't call them conflicting customs, but certainly different customs. And that would be whether or not you're talking about different liturgy. How does this synagogue, how does this synagogue pray? What are their services like? And what is this? Not just in terms of the way that the language sounds, because we know that it sounds very different if you go into a Hasidic a synagogue, or an Ashkenazic synagogue, or a Sephardic synagogue, or a Yemenite synagogue. I mean, there's a lot of options there. And even amongst those groups, you could subdivide and subdivide and subdivide. There's lots of different sounds. But but the liturgy itself could be a little different. I one time was in Jerusalem many years ago, and I had an opportunity to spend a Friday night and to go to participate in the Friday night services of what's called the Italian synagogue in Jerusalem. I don't know if any of you have ever been there. It's a fascinating building. It's a small synagogue, and it's recreated as a meant to be with the exact architecture and the look and feel of a synagogue from Italy, from Rome, the city of Rome. They actually have a very ornate, a beautiful hand wood carved Aron Kodesh, the Ark we were talking about earlier this week, the Ark in the synagogue. So they have this beautiful Italian Ark, and it was very interesting. It was a small rectangular room, probably still is. I haven't been there a long time, with a balcony above, like a wraparound balcony on a second floor, and wooden benches and very intricate, very ornate. Now, even more interesting and more unique than the building itself was they have their own prayer book and they have their own liturgy. It's called Nusach Roma, which basically means the liturgy as it's traditionally the prayers as they're traditionally said in Rome, Nusach Roma. And it seems that Rome, interesting, this is very interesting. Rome and Italy was somewhat of a, it's going to sound strange geographically, but Jewishly, it was almost like a border community between the the Western European and the Eastern European Ashkenazi Jewry above them, north, and some of the Northern African Jewry and Middle Eastern Jewry, which we would typically call Sephardic or the Eastern communities, and Italy and Rome particularly was a way station, was somewhat of a middle of a community for people in the middle, and their liturgy is an interesting blend. And you could look that up, and you'll find it has fascinating elements from both traditional Ashkenazi and traditional Sephardi liturgy, and it's their own prayer book, their own liturgy, their own prayer book. It was very interesting. It sounded somewhat familiar, and and that's their community custom. And in Israel, you have all kinds of things like that. And it's a beautiful thing. You want to talk about diversity of practice. You walk through the streets of Jerusalem, you could see different dress, different sounds of the language, different ways that Judaism looks and practices. I was talking earlier in the week about matzah with one of my other groups of students, and we were talking about matzah. So in our experience, matzah is as thin as a cracker as it could possibly be. You almost can't get it any thinner. And the thinner the better for me. I love it thin. There are Syrian thick matzahs. They literally call them thick matzahs, and they're much more like a pita than a matzah, and it's softer. And it's flexible. It's probably much more pleasant to eat, frankly, than than this hard burnt cracker that matzah that is Ashkenazis. We consider that to be normative. There's a difference in custom, and besides, probably the single most famous difference in Ashkenazi and Sephardic practice was. Is the fact that the Sephardim eat rice and the Ashkenazim don't. The rice and the other legumes and things that Sephardic customs accept and they eat on Passover. And there's a several 100-year-old Ashkenazi practice not to eat those things. So there's nothing wrong with eating it. God forbid. I'm not casting any aspersions. That's also Jewish and that's also Passover. But these are very different customs, and it's a funny thing. When you think about it in Israel, if you go into a store to buy some snacks for Passover, you have to look, are these the Sephardi snacks? Or are these the Ashkenazi snacks? And for the most part in America, that wasn't such an issue, but more recently it's become an issue, and you could get puffed peanut butter Pesach snacks at the Eastside Kosher Deli. And if you're Ashkenazi, your custom is not to eat those during Passover. You can have them before, have them after, but don't have them during. We have those interesting things. So Rabbi Zonenfeld, whose yahrzeit is today, and Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin, his Rebbe in Jerusalem, the two of them together were responsible, largely, not exclusively, but largely responsible for creating what came to be recognized as Minhag Yerushalayim, the custom of Jerusalem. So you can imagine here on the sort of contrary to everything I just described, The fact that Jerusalem is a place where the ingathering of the exiles, and you have so many different nationals, Jews from all over the world come back with their customs, and yet there is also something which is at least referred to as the customs of Jerusalem, the modern customs of Jerusalem practice. And some of the formative rabbinic voices in the late 19th and early 20th century, like Rabbi Sonnenfeld, were responsible for helping to settle on some of those customs. And it was a very significant role. So that's, I want to mention him. And as we say, that when you mention someone on their yahrzeit, it should be for a blessing. It really should be for a merit for them. We ourselves, when we quote them, or when we refer to them, when we recall them at any time of year, but particularly on their yahrzeit, it's a way of giving to them tribute, giving to them honor, giving to them merit in heaven. And then they bequeathed so much of value to us, their spiritual heirs, to the rest of Jewish history that has the benefit of their wisdom and leadership. So we want to give back. You always want to give back, and one of the ways that we do that is we can recall them favorably on their yahrzeit. Now, speaking of giving back, I just wanted to just make a little bit of an announcement. The Jewish Experience, who is, of course, the ultimate sponsor behind Live at 5 and all the great things that I've and my team and all these wonderful Jewish educators and community activists have been doing for the last 20 years or so. The Jewish Experience is making a fundraiser coming up. The effort will be it's as we've done for about the last 7-8 years, we do a 24-hour blitzkrieg online matching campaign. It's crowdfunding. It's coming up. We've done it 7-8 years in a row, and it's become really a kind of a fun way to bring together lots and lots and lots of community members to really feel part of something, contributing together to the community in this meaningful way. And it's called crowdfunding. So we'll be doing that, God willing, in the 14th and 15th of March, coming up in a little less than 2 weeks. Mark your calendars, and we do rely on your support. This is where I start sounding like NPR, public radio. The time is 5:17. But really, what we count on is your support for the programs and for the community. And so I just want to give you a heads up. It's a triple matching campaign. That means every dollar donated is tripled by a group of generous major donors who have really held up the effort, who will continue to hold up the effort with their broad shoulders. And the idea of it is that everybody join together. The power of the community is so very great. When you see 700, 800, 900,000 people all, giving making their contribution to the team, to the cause, you feel part of something very great. We talked yesterday about transcending yourself and being part of something bigger, something meaningful. It's a real opportunity to feel like a part of something very big, very important, very powerful, very, very good. And as we have said it before on one of the previous 179 episodes of Live at 5, it is a very healthy thing to be in the opportunity to be contributing at whatever level. We can all contribute at whatever level. I can remember. I'll just tell you. I can remember sitting many times in yeshivas in Jerusalem, where I was a student, where people there, yeshivas don't have a lot of tuition associated with them necessarily, and you could have a lot of people there who don't have a lot of money. They're really, really, really willing to live a meager life in order to spend more time sitting behind the Talmud and eking out a very meager living as a struggling scholars. And there's many people like that, and I was around many of them. But when somebody comes by to ask for monetary support, to collecting tzedakah for themselves or for others, every one of those people will pull out a coin out of their pocket, a half a shekel, or even 10 agarot. Back in the day, 10 agarot. What was 10 agarot worth? 3 cents. it was worth 3 cents. But everybody that came by asking, everybody, gave something, and you weren't given much, but it was the point that counts. And when a lot of people contributing together adds up to something very, very great. That's the secret of crowdfunding. And it was really, I have to say, there's a lot of crowdfunding that goes on out there in the broader world of philanthropy, but the Jewish crowdfunding that goes on is amazing. I have seen campaigns around the world where tens of thousands of contributions have come together in 24, 48 hours, and have and everyone donating a little bit can add up to an enormous impact. And that's really what it's about, being part of something impactful. So that's just a heads up, and it'll be coming in another 10 days. We'll try to let you know. I also wanted to just, give a nice shout out to my dear friend in Illinois, Rabbi Zev Kahn, in his Clean Speech Illinois campaign. He was invited on Fox News today. He and one of his college students were interviewed by Fox News Channel 32 in Illinois there, and it was a nice opportunity for them to speak about the campaign. And so just really very cool. We're hopefully seeing this campaign will be a role model for the college student version, which hopefully will take flight, and we'll see it on college campuses. I also just wanted to speak about briefly another interesting thing that I saw in the news. We were speaking yesterday about news reports, and interestingly, I think we only spoke about it after yesterday's show for the studio. I don't think we mentioned it during the show, as far as I can recall. But take a look in Kentucky. Fascinating that Kentucky this week became the first state in America to accept on a state level a new working definition of anti-Semitism that was drafted by the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Association. A very neat piece of news to check out. It's been touted very positively by some major Jewish groups as being a well regarded as an appropriate working definition of anti-Semitism, with some examples, and also equating sometimes what we see is that a very, very harshly spoken criticism of Israel is really a kind of a veiled criticism of Jews in an anti-Semitic way, also, that's crosses over the line. And again, not that there can't be discussion, but there can be discussion done in the right way. Along those lines, I also noticed in the news that the Dr. Seuss Foundation has ceased publication of 5 of his original books. None of the titles that I particularly recognize. I'm a big Dr. Seuss fan from my youth. But don't worry, Horton Here's a Who is still in publication, thank God. As well as I had trouble in getting to Salah Salou, some of my favorites. But Green Eggs and Ham are also safe. But there were a couple of the titles that you've never heard of before that were just quietly put out of publication by, actually not by any outside agency, but by the Dr. Seuss Foundation itself, as just containing a couple of things which have just become a little pasnished in today's day and age, in a heightened degree of sensitivity to cultures and races and things like that. There are some things over there that they just felt we just put them to bed. But the good news is, I think that the rest of Dr. Seuss's library seems to have survived, and he, we're not seeing a cancel of Dr. Seuss, which I'm happy about, because I think there's a lot of fun stuff there and valuable stuff if maybe it got a little trim. So just interesting. The efforts of Clean Speech Colorado have always been about enhancing conversation, not diminishing dialogue. Certainly, there are rules of engagement, and there should be, about ways that we can discuss issues in an attitude and atmosphere of respect. But we have to be able to discuss and address some issues. So I think that it's an interesting time for that. Who would have thought in today's day and age, that sort of First Amendment issues would be so much in the forefront of what's going on in the news, whether it's a new technology or a platform or and certainly in the realm of politics and political speech. Not to say that everything that's said is worth repeating or publishing, but we do want to encourage dialogue, and we don't want to quash opinions that at least aren't dangerous. They could be we don't have to have much respect for the opinions, but we have to ultimately we want to encourage conversation. It's a tough thing, but it's a needed thing. And as Jews, we are role models for that. And that every page of the Talmud is a demonstration of dialogue of divergent, highly divergent opinions that are very vehemently held. Every page of the Talmud has that. You want to read about a good fight? Just open up the Talmud and you can find one. But those fights are fights that are handled nonetheless with respect. The Talmud says that. Into the base medrash, into the yeshiva study hall where they're going to argue. They walk in and it's war, and they're like warriors, but they walk out arm in arm, and there's respect when the argument is done, and that really is the role model. That's the way that we want to strive to see things. So when I was in college many years ago, I won't say how many, on campus of poor Mr. Jefferson's University. I went to UVA, where Thomas Jefferson was the founder. I think he got canceled the last couple of years. But he was certainly very innovative person, and he was interested in education in many fields. And and despite any things that as an imperfect human being that he might have done that were objectionable, but certainly there were many great contributions that he made to the United States of America and to education. And I was a student there of English language and literature in Mr. Jefferson's University. So there was always quite an attitude and an ethic of appreciating dialogue. I was a member of the debate society, and that was that was a place where people were very much in habit of strong and passionate debate. There was a lot of debate going on over there, and but it was certainly handled in a respectful and a dignified way, and things could be explored, and that's that we want to hopefully to raise our our next generation of thinkers and leaders that are today on today's college campuses. Hopefully they're being raised with a recognition that an academic setting is a place where ideas should be aired, discussed, debated, argued, addressed. And and if that's not the case, and then I hope that to what degree it isn't, I hope that our country will come back around to that. I think that we're veering from it, and it was not too far ago that was an accepted practice in college campuses, where we were expecting to hear different attitudes and different ideas, and a college professor wouldn't be censured or terminated for expressing opinions that were debatable. Certainly we're not talking about dangerous ideas, but we could talk about ideas that could be debated, and debate we want. So that's a little bit about community customs, about Rabbi Sonnenfeld, about great debates, about controversy, and about rice on Pesach. So we shall resume all of those topics when we continue tomorrow at Live at 5. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a healthy and a holy. We'll see you tomorrow at Live at 5. Thanks for joining.